Hey folks, we're going to be writing a story. You're going to be writing a story, I should say, and your story is going to be about, well, I'm not going to tell you just yet. I'll tell you in a few minutes because I want you to focus in on a couple of things you're going to need to know before you start writing your story. Now, I've started to write a story right here just so you kind of have something to work with and look at. And so here's my story. There's a few things I did that you might not notice because this probably looks about like the beginning of every story that you've seen. One of the things you should know is with your mouse you can click around on the screen and move. See that little line right there? That's called the cursor. That flashing line is the cursor, and that's an important thing to know because wherever your cursor is, if you start typing, that's where it's going to go. And so the cursor is very important to understand where that is. If I put the cursor in the front of this word and press the tab button, let me just show you where the tab button is. If I get rid of some of the things on my screen, here's a picture of the keyboard that you're working on, or a pretty close picture to what the keyboard looks like. And here is the tab button. So I'm just going to make a little box over top of it so you can see it. There's the tab button. That's what you would push in order to make an indented line, and here's the example, right? So if I put my cursor right there, press the tab button, I've automatically indented it. So now it's pushed this first line in a little bit. What you should never do is use the space bar to do that. Some people want to push this button down here, and that's how we make spaces, and they want to push it several times in order to make this slide over a little bit. Don't do that. It makes it very hard to fix it later on when it causes some problems. So just use the tab button, and we won't need to talk about what it does if you mess it up and do it with a space bar. Also, if you notice in the beginning of each of my sentences, there are capital letters. Now, capital letters are very important. Things like the first word in a sentence, your name, real important things like that. We're going to make capital letters. Now, if you notice right here, I highlighted. So I clicked the mouse button down, and I pulled the mouse over top of something, and that's called highlighting. You'll see it changes the color. And if I highlight something, what it does is it says to the computer, hey, pay attention to this, because that's what I'm going to change. And so right now, if I only highlight one word and I change something, it'll only change that one word. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to type a new word, and I'll show you how to start a new paragraph in just a second. But here is how you would make a capital letter. You push the Shift key down and the letter that you want to be capitalized. Now, let's go back and look at our keyboard for just a second. There are two Shift keys. There's one Shift key here and one Shift key here. They do the exact same thing. It really doesn't matter which one you push. The reason there's two of them is because if you're typing correctly and your hands are on the home row, as we've discussed before, you won't even need to look at these space bars, and you can use either hand, depending on what you're doing, to hit that space bar and make your capital letters. So that's how you make your capital letters. Hold down the Shift key, push the letter, and then let go of the Shift key, okay? So that's capital letters. Spaces. If I want to make a space right now, I just showed you the space bar, which we use our thumbs to push, and that will make a space. So as I'm telling you these things, go ahead and try it, and just push those letters. It's not going to mess anything up. Go ahead and push the space bar. The tab we talked about. If I'm at the end of a paragraph, for example, I'm right here after my question mark and I want to go down to the next line, I can try to use the arrow keys on my keyboard, and this works really well. Here's the arrow keys over here. This works really well for just dodging around in the words that I've already typed, but if there's nothing down here, it won't go down any further. So I'll try it. I'm right here. You can see my flashing cursor, and I try the down arrow. Nothing's happening. If I hit the up arrow, it will go up, and you can see my cursor moves up, and it will move down, but it will only go down to the end of the paragraph. If I want to go down further, I need to push the return button. Now, if you're using a PC, this will be the enter button, but it, again, is the exact same thing, just has a different word on it. So, return button right there, and that's how you make the cursor go to a new line. You'll only do this at the end of paragraphs. Let the computer do the work when it's the end of a sentence. So when you get to the end of a line and you want it to go to the next line, just keep typing. The computer will figure it out by itself. You don't have to do that. All right? So we've talked about capital letters, spacing, tabs, return in order to get to the next line. You talked about the arrow keys, and there's one more thing I want to point out to you, and that is, well, there's two more things. One is how to make this question mark. People get confused by that. If you look at the keys on the keyboard over here, you'll see the question mark is on top, okay? When you're looking at these keys, anything that's on top, you need to push the shift key and then push that as if you're making a capital letter. If I want an exclamation point, I do the same thing. I hold down the shift key, I go up, and I push really the number 1, but what's going to show up is the exclamation point because it's on top. Once I do that, I let go of the shift key, and I'm going to have an exclamation point. So here's my shift, and I push the number 1, I got an exclamation point. Shift, I push the question mark, I get a question mark. If I want to erase something, I hit the delete key. That's really important also. Delete is right here. That's how you erase things. Okay? And so we've covered most of the things that you're going to need to know just to get started. If you make a mistake, and this is really important, if you totally do something that you didn't want to do, for example, let's say I highlighted something and it accidentally moved. Now everything's all messed up. All you have to do is hit this undo arrow, and this goes back and fixes it. Okay, so as soon as you mess it up, you can't wait a whole long time and then try to do it the next time you work on it. You have to do it pretty soon after you mess it up. Go up here, hit the back arrow, and it will fix it for you. So you are ready to get started typing your story.